educational courses. The latter includes curriculum assessment, pedagogy, traditions, childhood development, and supervising and examination of thesis. He has also been a member of the faculty board for teaching training and a member of the curriculum committee of the faculty. So, thank you for being here with us. The floor is yours, please.
Thank you very much. It will be very nice to present to you some of the problems we have realized during the pandemic. And I'm happy to see you all. And we will present these things very shortly, or briefly, I would say. And here we have a more or less normal situation at school, at least regarding science teaching activities. And this is something that was lost during the pandemic. And I had own experiences of this. More than 50 years ago today, my studies at upper secondary school were interrupted by a teacher's strike. And during some weeks, we had to do our studies by ourselves with textbooks and no teacher support at all. And in most cases, this worked out very fine. But there was one exception, and that was in mathematics. After 1 week, a new area was introduced, calculus. And although a dozen of students worked together with the textbooks, they didn't understand neither the ideas or the practice of calculus, although they attended a program with focus on mathematics. Without our teacher, we were lost. And after almost 1 month, the teachers returned to school. And here you can see the former Prime Minister of Sweden to the left when he was at school, welcoming his headmaster back when the strike ended. And today the situation is similar due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and students have lost the social culture and of the classrooms. And the studies are very poor quality, we can see. The teachers have lost the classrooms also, of course, and they have to find new roles. Especially in science, where laboratory work, excursions and things like that are very important. This is a disaster. And now students also are prepared to do their studies single-handed. And that is quite a difference compared to being in a classroom to work together. Also, all reflective parts, usually in dialogue form with fellow students and teachers, suffer. And we will here present some explanations of this situation. And if you start just to look at the design of the studies and also the outcome of the studies, you'll see some problems already there. There's differences in the design of home studies, of course, compared to those designed at institutions. Differences in learning outcome of home studies are different compared to those at school. And when we start to look at the design, how do they differ? The tasks the students are supposed to do are often introduced by short virtual lessons. The solutions of the students are often presented in texts, quoting course literature or websites. And these linguistically correct solutions give very poor information of understanding and learning, unfortunately. We look at the classroom again. It's very easy to understand that some important things really are lost when students leave this room. Let's look at differences between the learning outcome of home studies compared to those at school. Teachers experience a difficult situation, generating low quality teaching. So the teachers are aware of the problem, but they don't know how to deal with it. The loss of subject content is of course important. The student present texts without really understanding. And this effect is pronounced when grading often then is based on these reproduced texts. Without dialogue, the deeper level of understanding is lost. So, how to gain high equality in the understanding of the subject content for the student sitting at home? There is one example from a questionnaire to teachers about the situation. Most were very negative, but there was almost only one exception among hundreds of teachers. I've learned loads. Teaching at distance gives me new opportunities to develop pedagogically. And I think this is something that points out the problems in the ordinary teaching as well as in this distance teaching. And the basic misconception is that the teachers rarely acknowledge the importance of the social processes for the learning. And teachers fail to use the social processes methodologically when teaching at distance. They often not aware of them in the classroom either, but there they work naturally as we have a group working together there. As we remember when we look at this. So, in our early research, we have found that science teaching often results in the reproduction of the words of the teacher instead of useful skills based on the understanding of the theories taught. So in reality, it's possible for students to exclaim or say what they have learned, but they have hardly understand it. And therefore, it's very important to really be creative when creating tasks that should be solved at home. It's important that the teacher try to regain what was lost when leaving the classroom. And the task should be non-repetitive. There shouldn't be some kind of reproductions. And it's very important that the results should be shared and discussed. That's a way of getting deeper understanding. And it's also important how to solve tasks. Learning requires good communication between students and the teacher, of course. And it's very important that even if you make personal texts at home, it's important to get written and oral comments by others. And this communication between oral and written communication is processed differently by the brain. And it's very important to get the full view of what you have learned to use these parts of the brain. Other views, misunderstandings, and other things may promote the deeper understanding. So the others are always important. So teachers have to be in dialogue with the students in order to reach most of the goals of any curriculum. And what they can use is scientific breakthroughs, because they are often relevant areas of studies. A scientific breakthrough is a case when someone realizes important connections, which often develops the area that is studied. And always remember the age of the students, of course, and the level of their studies. It's easy to get young students to copy texts without them understanding anything. So, if we turn to science teaching, in physics, so we know that the theoretical models often are mathematical with high levels of abstraction. And this means that many students look at physics as a mathematical subject. Therefore, it's important to use other types of presentations which will facilitate the understanding regardless of the mode of learning of the student. In secondary school, it's possible to make simple experiments at home. In chemistry, the situation is a little bit different. Experiments, if you look at them, usually are performed in small groups. They are essential. But is sometimes we have danger with doing this, and it's possible to do them in person or one at home for everyone, but there should be in digital contact when doing them, and discuss the results and the experiences to reach deeper understanding. And theoretical tasks are quite useful, but they should be solved in cooperation, so different views of different students really are used. And if we finally turn to biology, the Darwinian perspective should always be essential when teaching biology. And if you forget this, it's almost impossible to get any understanding of the biological processes. Therefore, it's very important to create tasks revealing the dialectic nature of the processes. It's in nature, everything is almost always easy to explain, but it's very hard to predict anything. Therefore, it's important to discuss the specific areas of biology where environmental changes can be a case where or a result of a change of small number of factors. It's one way of deepening the understanding of biology. And although we have a pandemic, excursions may be performed in small groups, so you can discuss what you see and you can compare all these visions you have. So if we end up with some conclusions, try to preserve the quality factors of the classroom when students work at home. Use escape room pedagogy. Students work together, supported by the teacher. Be prepared to focus on guiding in the learning. And support the achievement of personal abilities useful in the future. Take into account the learning model of each student and what he has to learn to do what he wants to do in the future. And here we end with a picture that in some way shows this. This is not the pipe. It's a picture of the pipe. And that is something we have to remember in science teaching. It's very easy to teach about the picture and not what the picture stands for. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Jan-Erik, for this presentation, and Anne, the co-presenter and co-author of your work. It's really very interesting to see work like this, especially in the pandemic era that we live, and find ways to make our teaching better, and how to see our new roles as mentors, as facilitators, and of students. So questions about this presentation, there is one in the chat. Please put your questions or turn on your camera and your microphone. There are 22 people right now in the audience. Is there any quantitative research or inquiry related to this issue that you can share with us? That's one question. Jan-Erik, I see it in the chat. Please tell us more about.
Yeah, I can try to answer the question in the chat. I think it's a little bit early. I don't know if there are any research. What we have done now is just to look at inquiries done to teachers in Sweden. But what we realize when we read these is that the teachers often are not really aware of what they are doing when teaching. And I think there was in the paper today, in the daily paper, there was a study of teachers that half of the teachers in Sweden are prepared to quit their jobs if this situation continues with teaching at distance. And I think one main reason for this is that they have realized that there are other problems in the teaching than what they thought.
For sure, you gave us ideas about this escape room pedagogy and how to make things better in the virtual classroom. Looking at your presentation and your paper, I think of flipped classroom. Flipped classroom, of course, it's something different because we give to students assignments and work to do at home, and then in the class we have time to make experiments, to make different things, and we, of course, with this strategy of flipped classroom, we make our life easier and also students learn better. But in this situation of the pandemic era we live, to admit we have to find new ways of teaching, and knowing the theories of distant learning, we know for sure that in the distant learning environments, it's the material that it's the teacher, not actually the teacher. That's the big idea of the theories behind the distant learning. So, of course, we have to admit our new role and trying to make our work as a science teacher in this situation. I put in the chat the room, the chat room for Jean, Eric, and Anne. You can also put their questions and ideas and continue this conversation and this discussion, and I would like to thank you that with all your experience you put in this presentation and gave us good ideas, and thank you for this presentation. I will try now to go to the last presenter, Marco Zevi.